Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the podcast where we basically take interesting, sometimes complex information, and we unpack it for you.
Yeah, we try to pull out the key insights, the surprising bits, and give you just enough context so it all makes sense.
Think of it as your shortcut to getting up to speed on some fascinating topics. And today, wow, we're diving into a real heavyweight, a book that's, well, it's inspired millions. Its fans say it holds the secrets not just to getting rich, but really to achieving any big goal.
We're talking about Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich.
Exactly. We've got excerpts from the book itself, and we're going to explore what Hill called this secret formula, something he claimed was used by, titans of industry. Our mission here is to unpack that core philosophy, look at the principles, the examples he gives, and figure out how these ideas, which have been around since the 30s, might actually apply to you listening right now.
Yeah, and it's presented in a pretty unique way, isn't it? Not your typical self-help format. It came out in 1937, and Hill frames it as the result of this massive, 20-year research project.
Right, supposedly kicked off by Andrew Carnegie himself.
That's the claim. Hill says Carnegie basically challenged him. Go figure out what makes successful people tick. Edison, Ford, me, distill it down and share it. So the book is supposedly Hill delivering on that promise.
So it's positioned not just as theory, but as a practical plan.
Exactly. A practical philosophy tested across, all sorts of professions. Hill really believed this magic formula, as he sometimes called it, the thing behind Carnegie's fortune and so many others, needed to be accessible to everyone.
Especially people without the time or resources to do that kind of deep dive themselves.
Right. He even wanted it taught in schools. Imagine that. Thinking it could drastically shorten the learning curve for success.
Wow.
And the book does include some pretty impressive endorsements for its time. Like a former president and chief justice called Hill's earlier work on the 17 Principles splendid, saying every leader should understand it.
Okay.
And F.W. Woolworth, the five and dime store guy, he apparently credited the philosophy with guiding his whole retail empire, even the famous Woolworth building.
So, the author's claim is pretty bold. This isn't just wishful thinking. It's a kind of science of achievement, he discovered. Where do we even start unpacking that?
Well, Hill says the absolute foundation, the starting point for any major achievement, especially getting rich, isn't luck or talent or connections. It's something internal.
Which is definite desire. He really emphasizes that word, definite.
He absolutely does. It's crucial. This isn't, oh, I wish I had more money. It's knowing precisely what you want with this, intense clarity, almost an obsession.
He presents it as non-negotiable,
Yeah.
right? Without that burning specific desire, nothing else really works.
Pretty much. It's the fuel. Without it, the engine won't even start, according to Hill.
And he kicks things off with a really strong example. Edwin C. Barnes and Thomas Edison. It's a classic story from the book.
Yeah, Barnes didn't just want a job with Edison. That wasn't specific enough. His definite desire was to work with Edison to become his business associate.
Think about how crazy that must have sounded. Here's this guy, Barnes, with literally no money.
Right. No introduction, couldn't even afford the train fare to get to Edison's lab in New Jersey. I mean, by any normal standard, his goal was completely out of reach.
Most people would just give up right there. That's impossible.
Exactly. But Barnes's desire wasn't just a thought. It was, like Hill describes it, a burning intensity. It pushed him to act anyway. He hops a freight train.
Literally shows up looking like a tramp, as the book says.
And announces not, can I have a job, but I've come to go into business with Mr. Edison.
The audacity. But Edison apparently thought something.
Yeah, Hill says Edison recognized it wasn't about his clothes or background. It was the look on his face, his whole bearing. It screamed, I am going to get what I came for. He was absolutely determined.
He didn't get the partnership right away, obviously.
No, of course not. He got a menial job, low pay, sweeping floors or whatever. But crucially, it put him in Edison's orbit. It was a foot in the door towards his definite goal.
And the book highlights this key mindset shift. Barnes burned all bridges behind him.
That's such a powerful image. He didn't have a plan B. Failure just wasn't on his radar. He committed everything to that one goal, working with Edison.
And he just stuck with it.
Yeah, focused on it relentlessly until, as Hill puts it, it became the dominating obsession of his life. And then, years later, the opportunity finally came.
The dictating machine thing.
Exactly. Edison had this new business machine, the Ediphone, but his sales team was skeptical, didn't think it would sell. Barnes saw his chance, stepped up, said, I can sell this.
And he did. so successfully that Edison gave him the national distribution contract.
That initial, seemingly impossible desire, nurtured by years of focus and persistence, finally became reality. Made Barnes a very wealthy man. It all started, Hill argues, with that unwavering, definite desire.
Okay, so desire is the bedrock. But what gives it actual power? What makes it manifest? Hill brings in faith.
Yes, faith. He calls it the eternal elixir that gives thought, vitality, power, action. It's the starting point for actually accumulating riches, he claims.
And this is where he introduces that really interesting, maybe slightly unsettling idea about the subconscious mind.
Yeah, the chemical laboratory idea.
Right. What's the gist of that?
Hill argues that our subconscious mind is always working, 24/7. And it takes any thought impulse that's strongly emotionalized, could be positive, like faith, courage, love, or negative, like fear, doubt, hate, and it starts translating it into its physical equivalent.
It doesn't judge. It just acts on whatever emotion-filled thought is dominant.
That's the idea. It immediately gets to work trying to bring that thought into reality, whether it's wealth or poverty, success or failure. Whatever you feed it with strong emotion, it works to create.
Wow. Okay, so the implication is huge. You have to consciously feed it positive, faith-filled thoughts about your goal. Otherwise, negative stuff will take over by default.
Precisely. That's why controlling your thoughts and cultivating faith is so central to his philosophy. You have to direct the subconscious intentionally.
And he gives another massive example to illustrate this, the formation of U.S. Steel.
Oh yeah, the astounding story, as he calls it, involving Charles M. Schwab, one of Carnegie's guys.
And Hill claims Schwab's application of this secret desire, faith plan was worth what, like $600 million to him?
That's
an insane money, especially back then.
It's a staggering claim. Hill sets the scene. Schwab, only 38, is at this fancy New York dinner. The bankers who arranged it are trying to introduce him to the big financial players, including the J.P. Morgan.
The bankers were nervous about Schwab, aren't they? Thought he was just a steel mill guy.
Yeah, they warned him, keep it short, don't bore Morgan, he's impatient. Morgan himself was apparently planning to leave early.
But Schwab didn't give a short, boring speech.
Not even close. Hill says Schwab had this magic personality, sure, but the real power was in the full-fledged, clear-cut program he laid down for the aggrandizement of steel.
So he had a detailed plan.
A very detailed, compelling plan. He spoke for over an hour, laying out this vision for consolidating the steel industry, showing how competing companies could be brought together profitably.
And Morgan, who'd apparently shot down similar ideas before,
Was totally captivated. Hill uses the phrase, swept off his feet. It wasn't just the idea of a steel trust, it was Schwab's absolute conviction, his faith in the plan, and his ability to articulate it with such passion and detail.
That combination, definite plan, unwavering faith, powerful presentation.
That, Hill argues, was Schwab applying the secret. And it directly led to Morgan agreeing to finance U.S. Steel, creating this massive corporation. Schwab's thought, emotionalized with faith in his plan, became a huge physical reality.
Okay, so this secret he keeps mentioning, he says he mentions it over 100 times, but never actually names it. Why do that?
It's a deliberate taking method, he claims. He believed the secret is most powerful when the reader discovers it for themselves, when they're ready and actively searching for it.
So it's not about finding a hidden word, but about having a mindset shift that lets you recognize the principle.
Exactly. It's about your own readiness. He suggests the secret might just pop into your head as an idea or a sense of purpose, or maybe looking back at a failure and suddenly understanding the lesson. It clicks when you're ready.
And it doesn't matter how much formal education you have.
Nope. He constantly points to Edison, 3 months of school, and Ford, less than 6th grade, as proof. They lacked schooling but were ready and applied the principles. What mattered was their mindset and their search. And he gives a really concrete first step related to this. He says, the moment you take your definite desire and your plan for getting it and you actually write them down.
Ah, the act of writing it down.
Yeah. That act itself is the first tangible step in turning the intangible thought into its physical counterpart. You're giving it form.
Okay, that makes sense. It moves it from just a wish to an intention. So desire, faith. What's next in actually building the path to the goal? Imagination comes up.
Right, imagination. He calls it the workshop of the mind. This is where the raw desire gets shaped into actual plans, and he makes a really bold statement here.
That our only real limitation is how we develop and use our imagination.
Pretty much, yeah. Within reason, of course. But he says imagination is the key tool.
And he breaks it down into two types.
First, synthetic imagination. This is what most of us use day to day. Taking existing ideas, concepts, plans, and just rearranging them into new combinations. Like building with existing Lego blocks. It doesn't create new blocks, but it builds new things.
Okay. And the second?
Creative imagination. This is rarer, he says. This is the faculty that taps into, well, he calls it infinite intelligence. It receives truly new ideas, insights, inspirations, stuff that seems to come from beyond your own experience or knowledge. He connects it to genius and the sixth sense.
But he advises focusing on the synthetic kind first, right? Because that's the workhorse for turning desire into money through plans using what you already know or can access.
Exactly. That's the practical starting point. And he tells that great little story, the enchanted kettle.
Oh, yeah, the drug clerk and the old doctor.
Right. The clerk buys this old kettle and a recipe from a country doctor for $500, his life savings. And supposedly, this kettle starts spitting out gold, metaphorically speaking.
But the point isn't magic.
No, the point is, what the clerk really bought was an idea. And crucially, Hill says the clerk mixed the doctor's formula with an ingredient of which the doctor knew nothing.
Which was?
Implied to be the clerk's own desire, faith, imagination, and crucially, an organized plan he built around that idea. That blend created the magic. It's often seen as a parable for how Coca-Cola started. The value was in the idea plus the mindset ready to exploit it.
So imagination shapes the idea, but then you need structure. That leads to organized planning.
Absolutely essential. Hill is really blunt about this. Knowledge alone is just potential power. It doesn't do anything, doesn't attract money, unless it's organized and directed through practical plans towards a definite goal.
Knowledge becomes power only when applied.
Exactly. And he actually criticizes educational systems here. He says they often stuff people full of general knowledge, but totally fail to teach them how to organize and use that knowledge effectively once they graduate.
He uses the Henry Ford libel trial story again for this, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's a perfect illustration. The lawyers try to prove Ford is ignorant by asking him random general knowledge questions, history, stuff unrelated to cars.
And Ford basically says, I don't know, but I can push a button and get someone who does know in here in minutes.
Right. Showing the difference between hoarding random facts, general knowledge, and having deep, specialized knowledge in your field, plus knowing how to organize and access other people's knowledge when needed. Organized knowledge. Ford's power wasn't just what was in his head, but his system for applying knowledge.
So it's not about knowing everything, but knowing what you need to know for your specific goal and how to get it and use it. Successful people keep learning that specialized stuff.
Continuously. And Hill suggests practical routes, night schools, correspondence courses. He makes an interesting point about paid courses, actually.
That paying for them builds discipline.
Yeah, unlike free libraries or public schools, which he felt were often undervalued because they cost nothing, paying for a correspondence course, meeting deadlines, making payments that process itself builds discipline, decision, action qualities you need for success.
That's an interesting take.
He gives the example of Stuart Austin Weir. Middle-aged guy, married, needed a law degree. Instead of a standard program, he cherry-picked specific, specialized courses from different top colleges for each subject.
Laser-focused learning.
Totally. He knew exactly what he needed, planned how to get it efficiently, and finished a 4-year degree in 2 years. It shows the power of knowing how to buy knowledge strategically for your purpose.
Okay, so you've got the desire, faith, imagination, the plan based on organized knowledge. For most people starting out, the next step is marketing themselves, right? Their personal services.
That's where most journeys to riches begin, Hill says. And it needs just as much intelligent planning as selling a product.
And right away, he throws down a challenge. Leader or follower?
Yeah, a fundamental choice. And he's very clear the difference in rewards is huge. Then he lays out what he sees as the key qualities of leadership. It's a long list.
Things like self-confidence, self-control, sense of justice, definite decisions, definite plans.
Doing more than you're paid for, having a pleasing personality, empathy, mastering details, taking responsibility.
Cooperation, honesty, magnetism, specialization, and being willing to take the heat for your team's mistakes. It's a high bar.
It really is. Leadership isn't just a title, it's a whole way of being, according to him.
I like the point about doing more than paid for. Seems crucial for standing out. And he talks about a shift in workplace dynamics.
Yeah, away from just top-down command towards more mutual cooperation, like a partnership. Guided by the golden rule, not the rule of gold, the focus shifts from just getting to giving value the go-giver over the go-getter.
And to navigate this new landscape, he suggests a really different way to market yourself. the written brief.
Yeah, this is way beyond a standard resume.
Yeah.
He compares it to a lawyer's brief for court-detailed, strategic, maybe even needing expert help to prepare.
What goes in it?
It has to be specific to the job you want. Clearly state your qualifications for that role, and crucially, explain why you believe you're qualified. That's the application. Show you understand the role and how you fit.
And the research part.
Absolutely vital. Show you've researched their business, understand their challenges, and this is key, include specific suggestions for their benefit based on that research.
That flips the script, doesn't it? From here's what I want to, here's how I can help you achieve your goals.
Exactly. It's proactive value creation. And then he pushes it even further.
The probation offer. Working for free initially.
Yeah, it sounds radical, but his point is, if you truly have faith in your ability to deliver value, a trial period's all you need. Offering it shows immense confidence. He claims it often gets you hired with pay, sometimes even back pay for the trial because it's so compelling. Another burn the bridges move.
He gives that example of the woman who made the huge plan book for her son.
Oh yeah, the 50-page plan book, incredible. Detailed his qualifications, sure, but the real kicker was the plan tailored for the specific job he wanted.
Based on research she had him do on the company and its competitors.
Digging up competitive intel at the library daily, the book included specific, valuable suggestions for the company based on that research.
And the result.
He got the job. Without even having an interview, the written plan was that powerful. It demonstrated his value in strategic thinking better than any conversation could have. It's Hill's proof of concept for planned strategic self-marketing.
Okay. Desire, faith, imagination, planning, marketing. What provides the actual oomph, the force to make it all happen and push through obstacles? That's power.
Right. Exactly. Power. And Hill defines it very specifically. Organized and intelligently directed knowledge.
So back to knowledge, but now it's knowledge in action. Organized and directed.
Precisely. And the sources are infinite intelligence via creative imagination, accumulated experience, libraries, education, and experiment research.
And the main method he gives for getting and using this power is the mastermind principle.
Yes, the mastermind. He defines it as coordination of knowledge and effort in a spirit of harmony between two or more people for the attainment of a definite purpose.
So basically, teamwork plus shared goals.
It's more than just teamwork. The core idea is that no single person has enough experience, knowledge, ability on their own to achieve great success or fortune. You need the coordinated minds and efforts of others working in harmony.
But he adds that psychic element too, doesn't he?
He does. This is where it goes beyond just practical collaboration. He suggests that when minds truly coordinate in perfect harmony, their individual spiritual energy units blend somehow, creating a kind of third mind, a psychic force.
Like batteries. A group gives more power than one.
That's his analogy. A group of brains in harmony generates more thought energy, more insight, more power than any single brain could alone. It's a synergistic effect on a mental or even spiritual level.
That's a pretty far-out concept for a business book.
It is, but it's central to his philosophy. And again, he uses Henry Ford. He notes Ford had genius, but also big disadvantages early on: poverty, no education.
But his success really took off after he connected with certain people.
Hill points specifically to Ford's close friendship with Edison, and later his alliances with Harvey Firestone, John Burroughs, Luther Burbank, all guys with massive brain power.
And the idea is Ford somehow absorbed their strengths through association.
Through harmonious association, yes. Hill literally says men take on the nature and the habits and the power of thought of those with whom they associate. By aligning harmoniously with these brilliant minds, Ford tapped into a collective power that helped him overcome his own limitations and achieve incredible things.
The book also mentions life as a stream of power.
Yeah, a quick metaphor. Thinking is a stream. Positive emotions, faith, love, enthusiasm carry you towards success. Negative emotions, fear, doubt, greed, pull you towards failure. The mastermind helps you stay in that positive current. He even connects the 1929 crash to millions being swept onto the negative side, framing the book as a way back.
Okay, one of the most, unique principles in the book, tied to power and creativity, is sex transmutation. That seems like a leap from business strategy.
It definitely stands out, but Hill presents it as a major, often overlooked source of power. He argues the desire for sex is the strongest human emotion.
Okay.
But he says this intense energy doesn't just have to be expressed physically. It can be transmuted consciously, redirected into other creative efforts. When you channel that powerful drive towards your definite purpose, it can elevate your thinking, your drive, your creativity to potentially genius levels.
So harness the energy, don't just release or suppress it.
Oh, exactly. Redirect it into building, creating, achieving. He claims his research showed that the most successful people, especially men who built fortunes or achieved fame, were often highly sexed individuals who had mastered this transmutation.
He also mentions the influence of women quite a bit here.
He does. He suggests many great men were powerfully motivated by a woman, the desire to please her, impress her, provide for her. He sees women as having immense power over men through this dynamic and advises ambitious men to seek the modifying influence of the right woman.
And this transmuted energy links to things like charisma.
Yeah, personal magnetism, enthusiasm, charm qualities crucial for leadership and sales. He thinks master salesmen, consciously or not, are transmuting sex energy into that intense sales drive. While sex alone is physical, he believes when it's blended with higher emotions like love and romance, it can fuel true genius. Love adds balance and constructive purpose. Even the memory of love, he suggests, can inspire creativity.
Wow, okay, so that ties back to the sixth sense, or creative imagination you mentioned earlier. The genius faculty.
It does. He sees the sixth sense as the pinnacle, what separates genius from the ordinary. It's not automatic. It's cultivated by applying the other principles, especially harnessing and transmuting energy. When developed, it allows you to receive ideas and insights seemingly from outside yourself, from infinite intelligence or the ether.
He mentions EST research.
Yeah, like J.B. Rhine's work on telepathy and clairvoyance. He offers it as sort of supporting evidence that there might be intangible mental powers we don't fully understand, powers the sixth sense can tap into, especially when the mind is stimulated and alert.
And he describes his own very personal method for trying to cultivate the imaginary cabinet.
This is one of the most fascinating, maybe strangest parts of the book. He details this nightly ritual he performed. He'd imagine holding meetings with a group of historical figures he admired as invisible counselors.
People like Emerson, Edison, Lincoln, Napoleon, Carnegie, Ford.
Right. He'd close his eyes, picture them around a council table. He would audibly address them, asking for specific traits like Lincoln's justice, Edison's persistence. He'd present his problems to them and imagine their advice.
And he claims they started to feel real, developed personalities.
That's what he says. Lincoln was solemn, pain-witty, Napoleon pragmatic. It became incredibly vivid for him. He even recounts this powerful dream where Lincoln appeared at his bedside.
The warning about finishing his work.
Yeah, telling him the world would need his philosophy during a coming chaos, urging him not to fail. It was a profound experience for Hill.
And the point of this whole imaginary cabinet practice.
He believed it dramatically boosted his own mental stimulation, helped him overcome discouragement, master fear, and tap into his creative imagination. He felt like he was connecting with that unknown something that inspired these great minds. It was his personal technique for activating that sixth sense.
So it seems like all these principles, desire, faith, imagination, planning, mastermind, transmutation, sixth sense, they're all ultimately tools to influence the subconscious mind.
That's the unifying thread, really. The subconscious is the fertile ground. It accepts any emotionalized thought, positive or negative. The 13 principles are the methods Hill provides to consciously plant positive, faith-filled seeds about your definite purpose and to weed out the negative ones. But it requires constant effort and vigilance because fear and doubt are always trying to creep back in.
Which leads us directly to the barriers. Hill doesn't just focus on the positive. He spends a lot of time on what stops people. He lists 30 major causes of failure.
Yeah, based on analyzing thousands of people. He found it tragic that he estimated 98% of people fail despite trying. He saw it as a failure of education and society, not just individuals.
And the list is meant for self-diagnosis.
Exactly. Go through it honestly. See what resonates, what might be holding you back. The good news, he says, is that almost all of them, 29 out of 30, are controllable. They're habits, mindsets you can change. Only unfavorable heredity is tough to fix alone, and even that he thinks a mastermind can help mitigate.
And leading the charge against success are the 6 ghosts of fear.
Right. These are the big enemies because they're insidious. He says indecision leads to doubt, and doubt hardens into fear, often subconsciously. You have to actively identify them in yourself, understand how they work before you can fight them.
He puts the fear of poverty first, calls it the most destructive.
Yeah, hardest to master. He thinks it stems partly from our tendency to prey on each other economically. Humans use financial leverage instead of claws, creating this deep-seated fear of lack.
Symptoms.
Indifference, just giving up. Indecision, doubt, constant worry, being overly cautious. Procrastination. He also notes how poverty impacts self-respect and can physically manifest in someone's posture and spirit.
He also links it to that getting without giving idea.
His viewpoint was that demanding more pay for less work or relying on relief without contributing value ignores basic economic laws and ultimately undermines society. He saw it as related to this pervasive fear and greed, and we're just presenting his view here.
Okay, second ghost, fear of criticism.
Hugely damaging, he says. It kills initiative, crushes imagination, makes you conform, destroys self-reliance, starts in childhood with harsh words from parents or peers.
And it affects big life choices. Career, marriage.
Absolutely. Doing things out of fear of what others will think or say rather than following your own definite purpose. Symptoms include being overly self-conscious, lacking poise, inferiority complex, extravagance, trying to impress, lack of ambition, procrastination again.
He uses the Wallace Simpson King Edward story here.
Yeah, not to judge their choices, but as an example of facing massive global criticism head-on for a definite desire, love in their case. He saw it as an act of immense courage against this specific fear.
Third ghost, fear of ill health.
Tied to fear of poverty, medical bills, and maybe old religious teachings about suffering. He makes the startling claim that maybe 75% of illness is imaginary, or hypochondria rooted in fear.
Believing you're sick can make you sick.
That's his argument. Fear weakens resistance. He mentions hexing, the power of suggestion making someone ill. Disappointments in life, especially business or love, are big triggers too.
And he tells that wild story about the nurse curing the heartbroken young man.
Yeah, the doctor arranging for her to basically seduce him out of his psychosomatic illness. Ethically dubious now for sure, but Hill used it to show the extreme power of mindset over body. A positive emotional focus replacing a negative one led to physical healing.
Okay. Fourth, fear of loss of love.
An ancient fear, he says. Methods change from force to persuasion, but the fear of losing someone or a rival winning persists. He thought women were more prone, seeing men as less trustworthy. Symptoms: jealousy, fault-finding, obsessive behaviors like gambling or overspending, restlessness, lack of self-reliance, maybe even violence in extreme cases.
Fifth, fear of old age.
Driven by fear of poverty in later life, fear of losing attractiveness, fear of declining health. Symptoms are slowing down mentally and physically before you need to, feeling inferior to younger people, apologizing for your age, and critically letting the belief "I'm too old" kill your initiative and imagination.
And the final ghost, fear of death.
He calls this useless because death is inevitable, frames it naturally as energy transformation. Symptoms include lack of purpose, especially after retirement. The cure, a burning desire for achievement through useful service. Busy, fulfilled people don't worry about dying, he argues. Other triggers: poor health, poverty, leaving family destitute, lack of occupation, disappointment, fanaticism.
Okay, those 6 fears cover a lot of ground. How do we actually beat them, according to Hill?
The antidote is surprisingly simple, but requires discipline. Prompt and firm decision.
Decision cuts off worry.
Exactly. Worry comes from indecision, he says. So make definite decisions, accept death. Stop worrying about getting rich. Trust the process. Ignore criticism. Focus on your goal. Embrace old age, wisdom. Dismiss illness symptoms unless confirmed. Decide you can live without love if needed. Focus on self-reliance.
And the master decision.
Decide that nothing is worth the price of worry, period. This brings poise, peace, clarity. Fear paralyzes. Decision liberates. Fear also spreads, he warns.
So conquering fear requires ongoing self-awareness
Yeah.
and mind control.
Yes. Honest self-analysis first recognized we're naturally prone to laziness, negativity, fear. Then mind control, deliberately building habits to counteract those tendencies. Filter out discouraging people and influences.
It's active, not passive.
Totally. You either control your mind or it controls you. No middle ground. And the most practical way, keep your mind constantly busy with your definite purpose and your definite plan. Fill the space. Leave no room for fear.
He brings back Ford again here.
As the ultimate example. Started with nothing, controlled his mind, focused on his purpose, acted persistently, created his own chances. Proves no chance is just an excuse, Hill argues. You make your chances through focus and action.
Wow. Okay, we have covered a lot of ground from Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
It's definitely a dense philosophy. Let's try to recap the core pillars.
Sure. It starts with that absolutely critical burning definite desire. That's the foundation.
Fueled by unwavering faith, cultivated through techniques like autosuggestion.
Then you need imagination, the workshop, to shape that desire into organized plans based on specialized applied knowledge.
Persistence is woven through all of this, obviously, and leveraging the power of the mastermind principle for collective energy and insight.
Crucially, identifying and conquering the 6 ghosts of fear, especially through prompt decision.
And maintaining conscious mind control, keeping your focus locked on your purpose and plan.
Those are the big ones, yeah. And Hill insists these aren't just ideas to ponder, they're principles for action.
Right. So some actionable takeaways for listeners might be, first, actually define your major definite purpose. Get crystal clear. Write it down along with a plan.
Second, actively practice autosuggestion. Read your statement daily with feeling to embed it in your subconscious. Build that faith.
Third, continuously seek out specialized knowledge for your goal. Learn how to organize and apply it. Don't just collect facts.
Fourth, if you're marketing yourself, plan it strategically. Maybe try that written brief idea. Show your value, offer solutions, be proactive.
Fifth, consciously build a mastermind group. Find people you can work with harmoniously towards shared or supportive goals.
Sixth, do that honest self-analysis. Which fears are holding you back? Be ruthless with yourself.
Seventh, practice making prompt, firm decisions. Cut off worry at the root.
And maybe overarching all of that, cultivate mind control. Deliberately focus your thoughts on your purpose and plan every single day. Starve the negativity.
These principles really put the power and the responsibility squarely back on the individual's mindset and actions, don't they?
Completely. It's all about mastering your internal world to shape your external reality, according to Hill. It challenges you to look inward first.
Okay, so let's end with a final thought, building on that. Hill hammers home the idea that knowledge only becomes power when it's organized and directed to a definite end. So the question for you listening is this. In today's world, drowning in information, how intentional are you about organizing the knowledge you gain? How deliberately are you directing it with purpose and faith towards what you most desire?
Or are you just accumulating potential power, reading things, learning things, without ever really channeling it, transforming it into tangible results in your life?
Something to definitely chew on.
For sure. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Until next time.